Hi everybody, welcome to this edition of REDTalks. Today we have someone from over the other side of the water, and that is Sean Dugan. Hi Sean.
Hey Pam, how are you?
I'm
Nice to
well.
see you. Nice seeing you again.
I know, it's been a long time. So I first met Sean a few years back at a convention, and I was just saying to you, Sean, that your story just blew me away, your optimism and your story of recovery. So I thought it would be a great idea to get you to come along and share your experience of recovery again with everybody on this. So thank you for agreeing to do that.
You're quite welcome.
And thank you for your bio. You sent me a short description, but I'm not going to take up too much time because you can kind of give everybody an overview of that when it comes to it. But you were born and raised in LA, California.
Yes, ma'am.
By all accounts, you said you had pretty good upbringing,
Yeah.
pretty stable upbringing,
Yes.
and you started experimenting in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
Wasn't kind of a problem at that point. However, it was throughout the 80s when the cocaine scene, and then it escalated in the later 80s to crack cocaine, and that's where the consequences came in and kind of lost your job and stuff because you worked in the television industry.
Yeah.
You tried to seek recovery in the early 90s, like 91, I think it was.
Well, my sobriety day is 91, so I originally went to my first 12-step meeting in October of 1987. So the late 80s. And I called a few months before that. I'd been fired from a job, and I made my first call probably February of 1987. So that's when I was first told about, 12-step programs and, wanted to see what they were about, but it wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for it yet, so it took, about 6 more months before I actually went into a meeting. And going to meetings, I still didn't want to get sober. I was still in denial that I didn't have a problem, or I wasn't as bad as those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally, went to rehab in 1990, and then even after that, I still had, one more go round in me, and finally I got arrested again.
Well,
January.
Can I stop you there, Sean?
Yeah.
Can I stop you there? Because you can tell us about this when we start. So this will be a good talking point for the beginning.
Okay.
For how you kind of got into recovery. But for the introduction, you are now in 29 years of recovery. 29 years, man, that's phenomenal. So we are privileged to have you on, so thank you for agreeing to take time out and luxurious lockdown do this for us. So that would be my first question, will be what was life like before coming into recovery? So
well, as I said, or as you were saying, drugs and alcohol were not really a problem. I mean, they were, a non-issue, period, in high school. When I got out of high school, or as you guys call over there, secondary school, I started smoking weed. And growing up, I was a goody two shoes. I was a good guy. I was, altar boy, a Boy Scout. I was a really nice kid. Loving, supportive parents. Nobody ever would have thought that I would, become a drug addict or an alcoholic. So, getting out of high school, started smoking weed, and it was something I did occasionally, maybe once or twice a month. And then that soon progressed to every weekend. And then that soon progressed to smoking all the time. And it was just, like some people smoke cigarettes, I smoke weed pretty much the same way. I did it every day. Didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Although it was still illegal, back in the States, I just was doing it every day. So I was drinking at college parties or a sporting event and smoking weed. And that's just what I was going to do. And then I promised myself I was never going to do cocaine. And then one weekend, somebody offered me some cocaine, and I was like, okay, I'll try this. And again, that was 1984. cocaine, they still believed, was non-addictive. It was the party drug. It could help you drink more. You were cool if you had it. People liked you. People wanted to be around you. And those are things that I wanted. You know, I wanted people to like, and people already liked me. It's funny. You think back, I was already popular. You know, I was already popular. I already had lots of friends. I already had a good life, but I still thought I needed something more. So I was just snorting cocaine in the mid '80s. My folks helped me buy a condominium, and I decided that I should stop snorting cocaine because, you know, I should put that money to my house and, you know, not blow it on cocaine. So that was the first time that I tried to stop. And I told myself I was going to have a housewarming party this particular weekend, and I was going to do enough to get it out of my system. And, you know, when I ran out, I bought more. And, you know, so, I know I said I'll stop on Saturday, I'll stop on Monday. And then it was, you know, it's like somebody on a diet. You know, I'll start, you know, I'll eat the pizza today and I'll start my diet on Monday. So I was always pushing my start date back. And then after 2 or 3 months of that, I said, you know what, I don't even have a problem. You know, no reason to stop. I was in my mid-20s. I was a homeowner. I was working, as you said, in the TV industry, you know, in sports production. I thought I had arrived, and there was no reason to stop. And I told myself again, as long as I don't smoke cocaine, you know, freebase/crack, everything was fine. And one day somebody offered me a hit off the crack pipe, and I said, okay, I'll try it. And I liked it. And, you know, the thing about crack cocaine, you come to the repercussions and the consequences happen very quickly. And, you know, within 2 or 3 months, I stopped paying my mortgage, you know, on the condominium. I couldn't get to work on time. You know, I was lying to people. I was, you know, stealing, just, you know, lying about stupid stuff. You know, the Christmas of that year, I remember we were having Christmas dinner at my cousin's house. So I had my own place. So I left my house in the morning, went to my parents' house, opened up gifts with them, and then had concocted a plan to go home and smoke some more cocaine. So I conveniently left everybody's presents at my apartment. So I needed a reason to go home. You know, I gave myself an excuse to go home. And again, those are the thoughts of a cocaine addict. We think of all these, you know, these big plans, these, you know, these diversions to carry out what we want to do. So again, that was, you know, Christmas of 1986. And by February of, you know, the next year, like I said, I'd lost my job. And that's when I, you know, called Cocaine Anonymous for the first time, made that first call. Like I said, by October, I was walking into a meeting, but not deciding to get sober. And to illustrate what it was like, what life was like, 1989, I was working, during 1988, I was working at a health club in sales, selling health club memberships. And I got fired from that job in January of 1989. And probably about 2 weeks of being fired from that job, I was arrested for the first time. And that started a string over the next 8 months. I was arrested 7 times total. And not just, you know, traffic tickets. These were where I was handcuffed, put in the back of the police car, and spent at least 1 night in jail. Most cases, you know, it was 2, 3 nights. There was a 30-day period there. And again, I grew up being a good student, an altar boy, 2 parents. I was never in a gang. So I didn't fit the profile of the typical criminal based on my upbringing, but my actions definitely did. You know, and with all the, you know, the protests and the awareness of police brutality that's going on, you know, in the world today, I think how lucky I am that I'm sober now, because if I got arrested 7 times now, you know, I'm a black man, you know, well-built. The police might think I'm a threat, you know, so in 1989, it was just 7 times where, you know, the arrest was pretty easy. And if that was now, you know, I might have been shot by the police or beaten up by the police. So that's what life was like for me, during, you know, back then. And it was burglary, you know, possession, robbery, just trying to fuel my addiction with criminal activities. That's how I got my money. And, you know, so got arrested, you know, again, late in 1989, and then started going back to meetings and was going to meetings on a regular basis. I still didn't believe I was an addict. I still believed that I could figure this out and just kind of, you know, get better, not stop. Just want to, you know, not be as crazy as I was. And that didn't work. And I said I went to rehab in 1990, in February of 1990, and I spent 30 days in rehab and left rehab and went right back to the crack house. I mean, literally went right back to the crack house to tell them how great it was to be sober. And, you know, they didn't want to hear about that. You know, they want to know what I had, you know, if I was buying some, if I had some, or, you know, what, you know, they just wanted to party. So I stayed out for about another 6 weeks and went back to rehab in May of 1990. And then I stayed sober for the rest of the year. I mean, honestly sober. Got a job working in sales and went to work every day and you know, went to movies and went out on dates and went to picnics and did the things that normal people do. But I still didn't believe I was an addict, and I still had a plan that I was going to pick up again after I was going to stay sober for a year and then pick up after that year and then drink and use like a normal person. And at 8 months, I figured that was close enough to a year. You know, that was the longest time I'd ever been sober. So that was great. You know, 8 months, that was great. And I, you know, I was living in a sober house. I was living in a recovery house. And on one Friday night, I left to get loaded, and I thought it was going to be just that night. And that one night turned into 26 days. And then I got arrested one more time. You know, I got arrested January 31st, 1991. In Riverside, California. It's a suburb of Los Angeles, about 60 miles east of Los Angeles. And I stayed in jail for 2 months. And sometime over that 2-month period is when I was able to reflect on my life being sober and my life being an active drug addict. And that's when I decided that I wanted to be sober. You know, I don't know if it was on the 4th day or the 5th day or the 10th day or the 15th day, but at some point during those 2 months in jail, I decided that I wanted to be sober. And I was given the gift of desperation. And when I got out of jail, I moved back into the sober living, and then that's when the recovery started for me. And there, as anybody, you know, there have been good days and bad days, and you know, positives and negatives and relationships and breakups and new jobs and firings and you know, parents dying and friends having kids and everything that everybody else goes through in life. But I just didn't have to pick up behind it, you know. And about a little over 10 years ago, I was given the opportunity to work in the treatment industry, and that's what I do now. I'm a sober companion, a recovery coach. My job is to help people get sober and stay sober, help them bridge, you know, or help them learn how to deal with the pitfalls of early recovery. And these are all people who are not going to hit a financial bottom. They've got the resources to keep their, like I said, the reason I got arrested January 31st, 1991 is because I didn't have any money to get high. I was working for my dealer. You know, if I had thousands of dollars in the bank, I would have just had my drugs delivered and I wouldn't have gotten arrested when I did. You know, something might have happened later, or I might have overdosed, or, you know, I don't know what would have happened, but I know for sure that if I had $100 in my bank account, I wouldn't have gotten arrested that day. You know, and I also know that if I had gotten out of jail on February 1st to February 2nd, I would have gone right back to getting loaded again. So I I was able to stay away. I was separated from drugs and alcohol long enough for that, my thought process to change, for me to want to stay sober. So that's what I do in recovery as a recovery coach or a sober companion. I try to help people get enough sober time so that, and show them the benefits of being sober. In 2013, I moved to New York, and I love it. I love the pace of New York. The only other place I would want to live right now, I mean, I'd rather live here than back home in LA. The only other place I would want to live is in London. And I've traveled to the UK. Like I said, I met you, 3 years ago on one of my trips to the UK. I made 4 trips last year and 4 trips the year before that. With the pandemic, I've already had to cancel 2 trips over this year. But if there's any way I can get some work in the UK, I might be a lot closer to you than I am now. I'm planning on getting over there.
And you know what? Scotland's not too bad either, Sean. Not too bad a place to stay.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I think it's a really important point that you highlighted as well. Like, out of your story, you said you had that kind of perfect upbringing. That addiction doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anybody. You don't have to fit any type of profile or be a stereotypical addict. Your story kind of really shows that. And obviously you've been in recovery for a long, long time now. Have you experienced any other kind of addictions or behaviors that have popped up throughout your recovery that you've had to deal with? And if so, how have you dealt with them?
For me, I'm struggling with food now. I'll tend to overeat. I'll tend to, eat my feelings, and getting to a point where, I put on some pounds, and I want to lose the weight immediately, and nothing happens right away. So then I'm depressed that this pair of jeans doesn't fit, so I'll just eat some more. Then I got to buy bigger jeans. I got to buy bigger shirts, and that's definitely one of the drawbacks of the pandemic, because when the world was open, I was working out. So I put on at least 20 pounds during this shutdown. And again, there's just no way I guess I could run outside, but I'm not really a runner. I like my workouts are in the gym. Elliptical, cross trainer, treadmill, free weights, equipment, all stuff that I can't get to right now. So in the back of my mind are all, when it opens up, I'll be fine. But for now, I'll just eat whatever I want. And it's the same thing, with addiction. I'll get sober January 1st, my New Year's resolution. I'll get sober, later. There's no reason to do it now, or I can't really do it now. I'm in this relationship and my wife drinks, or my job is so, all the excuses we make, for ourselves. So for me, I'm not a gambler. I know friends who are habitual gamblers, or compulsive gamblers. I'm not a gambler. I hate losing money. Addiction can manifest itself in food, gambling, sex, relationships, spending, drugs, alcohol. There's so many different ways it can manifest itself, and there's pretty much a 12-step program for every one of them. Mm-hmm. And they all use the same book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Whether it's cocaine addiction, alcoholism, overeaters, whatever. So, I said we're changing seats on the Titanic. It doesn't matter where you sit, that boat is still going down. So I'll rationalize again that it's not as bad. Overeating from time to time or eating my feelings is not as bad as drug addiction. But it's still something I need to, put in check and work on and be aware of it.
Yeah, and obviously you touched upon like that we're in the midst of a pandemic as well, Sean. And I don't know how much different things are where you are in New York compared to where we are, but I mean, how have you coped being a recovering addict throughout this? Do you feel like it's been challenging in any respects?
It, it there's, I like to look for the positives, in any situation. And the disease of alcoholism, it's a mental disease, and it's a disease of perception. And it's a disease that, depending on where I am, it can tell me how much better I am than somebody or how much worse I am than somebody. So I can always, I can, whatever the situation, you can give me $1 million. And if I'm in a good headspace, it's like, oh, that's great, I got $1 million. If I'm in a bad headspace, how long is that going to last? I wish, I got to pay taxes on that, or I wish it was $2 million. So one of the positives of this pandemic is the fact, like we're talking right now on Zoom. So people aren't able to go to face-to-face 12-step meetings right now. So there's a whole new area that people are able to connect via Zoom. Over the past 4 days, I spoke at a meeting in London. I'm here in New York, but I spoke at a meeting in London via Zoom on Thursday. I spoke at a meeting in Boston on Friday. I spoke to I spoke to a meeting in Queens, New York yesterday, and now you and I are speaking. I'm in Scotland today. So I'm definitely able to be all over the world from my living room. So that's definitely one of the positives. Because I've been around long enough, I know that face-to-face meetings are good and they're beneficial, but because of my time in sobriety, they're not as necessary for me. So it hasn't hit me as hard as if I was somebody in their first year of sobriety or the first 6 to 18 months. It hasn't, it hasn't been that hard. And again, I still get around, like my, I can go to the grocery store. I can, I've been, binge watching more movies or more series on TV, and it's fine. It's fine. Like I said, the first 60 days of this sobriety were spent in jail. So I've got the freedom to go outside, to eat what I want. So it's not as bad. You'll see Facebook memes and they'll say, oh, this pandemic is just like being in jail. And I can quickly say, you must never have been to jail before because this definitely isn't like being in jail. Would I like to be able to go to the gym? Yes. Would I like to be able to travel wherever I want? Yes. But, this hasn't been just me. This is worldwide. Countries are shutting down. So when I don't take things personal and realize, oh, how can they do this to me? No, they're not doing it to me. They're doing it. This is happening to everybody, and they're doing it trying to do a better thing. We're trying to help this and help people get through it. And we know it's not going to last forever. At some point, they'll come up with the vaccination. And at some point, the country, the world will open back up. But there will be changes. You and I were talking earlier that a lot of people will work from home going forward now. A lot of people will not travel as much as they did before. How much more work can be done from your home or via Zoom or on the phone or something like that. So, things are going to change. Things have changed. Things are going to continue to change. So let's make the best of it while we can.
Yeah, and I think once, like you said, once this is all said and done, I think there'll be a sense of more unity among people as well, because we've kind of had to go through this global pandemic together. We'll maybe be more unified, and like you touched upon, it's us being able to do this, over Zoom, connect, and have you on REDTalks, when before, that would have been a lot more difficult, kind of fly you out to our hub in Bathgate. So it definitely does have its positives, and it's good that you see it that way. And while we're on challenges though, like, so over your time in recovery, what other challenges have you faced and what have you learned from them, Sean?
The other challenges I had, I found that I'm not really good with money. You know, I've had numerous jobs where I made a lot of money, but you know, if you the old story of the grasshopper and the ant. You know, the grasshopper just partied. He just partied. He didn't store anything away for the winter, and the ant did. And when the winter came, the grasshopper was like, you know, he didn't have anything left. He didn't have anything stored up, where the ant was able to store things up for the winter. You know, I had a job once where I was in sobriety. I was working in the mortgage industry, and I made over $200,000 a year, but I was living check to check. You know, so I was getting these big checks and pretty much almost trying to spend them each month. And you know, when the mortgage industry, you know, hit bad, and I went from making, like I said, from, you know, 1 month I made, I think, $20,000, and next month I made $0. And it was fast living, you know, like I said, I wasn't storing things away. So going through that experience has taught me to live with less. You know, I still enjoy life. I still live a really good life, but I don't always have to have the most expensive or the best. Let me put some away, because things are going to change. I realize this is not always going to happen. And in my business, I'm an independent contractor. So when I'm working, I'm making money, and there's months when I don't work. So I have to live off of what I've saved. And so that's something that I've had to learn in sobriety. You know, like I said, I was on a job for 10 weeks at the start of this pandemic, and I haven't really worked now since May 1st. So, you know, I've had a couple really short jobs, but I'm fine. You know, I'm not in any panic. I know that I'll be taken care of. You know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm not in fear.
Thanks, Sean. And so I'm going to ask you the question. So, recovered, in recovery, recovering, is there any of those you would class yourself, or does it just not matter to you?
I am recovered. I'm a recovered drug addict. I've recovered from the seemingly hopeless state in mind and body that I suffered from, you know, 30 years ago. I am in recovery. And again, it depends on the day of the week or the meeting I'm in. My drug of choice, the thing that got me into recovery was cocaine, was crack cocaine, you know, or powdered, you know, smoking cocaine. So I consider myself a drug addict, a cocaine addict, because that's what really did it to me. But I go to AA meetings also, because there are more AA meetings than there are CA meetings. And some AA meetings want you to identify as an alcoholic. They don't want you to identify as a drug addict. So some people will say alcoholic addict, some people will say alcoholic. And again, it just depends on my mood that day. And if I go to a place and I like the meeting and I like the people and I can hear the message, I don't get hung up on, like, I can't say I'm an addict. So I just say I'm an alcoholic, or I'll say I have alcoholism. I will probably never say I'm an alcoholic addict, because I heard once somebody say that saying you're an alcoholic addict is like saying you're a German Shepherd and you're a dog. You know, if you're a German Shepherd, automatically you're a dog. You know, it can be, you know, the reverse can be true. You know, you can be a dog and a German Shepherd, but say you're a German Shepherd and you're a dog, no, automatically. So if I just say I'm an addict, I believe that covers it. If I'm an addict, I can be an addict to alcohol, or an addict to cocaine, or an addict to weed, or an addict to shopping, or an addict to sex, or an addict to food. So I just say I have alcoholism. If I'm in an AA meeting because they want you to say alcoholic, I'll say I'm an alcoholic. If I'm at a CA meeting and Cocaine Anonymous, I'll say I'm a cocaine addict. I might say I'm a recovered, just depends. And somebody will say, oh, you're not in recovery. And I don't know. This is what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, which is the book that Cocaine Anonymous uses. We are people who are recovered, past tense, from the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body that we suffered from. So I am a recovered cocaine addict. I am in recovery, and I have alcoholism. I have the disease of alcoholism, which tells me that on a good day or a bad day, I'm different than you. I'm either better than you or less than you if I'm not in a right spiritual place.
Thanks, John. And so on to the subject of kind of routines in recovery. Obviously, it's a bit difficult now to ask you this because we're in lockdown, you're restricted. There's many things that you can't do that you probably would have done. But in terms of routine for your recovery, do you have a particular routine, or are there things that you do for your recovery that you just can't live without?
I have always prayed, the 11th step of the 12 steps is taught through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And I've always prayed. And, some people, pray in the morning and ask God to keep you sober, pray at the end of the day and ask God to, thank God for keeping you sober. And a lot of people believe that you have to say those prayers on your knees, that's humbling. And most people do pray on their knees. And most of the time I did pray on my knees. But I was probably 12 or 13 years sober, and I heard somebody say that they pray as soon as they wake up, just as soon as their eyes open. And I started thinking about it, and I realized what I had been doing. Up until that point, I would wake up and, just laying there in bed or whatever, might start watching TV, depending on, if I had a TV in my room. And I would watch TV for a while. And then when I knew I was getting up, then I would pray on my knees and ask God to keep me sober for the day. Well, I might have already been awake for 30 to 45 minutes before I actually got up out of bed. So I realized that what I like to watch in the morning is SportsCenter. I like to watch ESPN. And if you're watching SportsCenter, there's a lot of beer commercials on there. So if I'm watching TV for 30 to 45 minutes, I've seen probably 4 or 5 beer commercials. I've seen guys do athletic feats that I'm never going to accomplish. I see guys with these, great bodies. They're, physically fit. And now I'm like, well, I can't drink. So, because that beer commercial tells me if I drink that beer, I'm going to be cool. Or I'm going to have girls like that. If I drink that, that beer is going to make me look better. So I can't drink, so I'm not going to look as good as those guys. And well, I'm not going to hit a home run in a game, so I'm not as good as that guy. So by watching SportsCenter for half an hour, I'm already negative. I'm already in the negative. I'm not zero anymore. I'm -0. So then if I wait to talk to God, like I said, I'm already -0. So when I heard this person say that as soon as he wakes up is when he starts praying, I adopted that. So now as soon as I wake up and I realize that I'm not just getting up to go to the bathroom, that I'm awake, whether it's 6:45 in the morning, 7:30, I'm awake. And then I start talking to God. Then I will think about somebody that I know who's going through a hard time, and I'll ask God to give them strength. Or so-and-so is trying to get a job. I hope, the right job comes for them. And I hope so-and-so's parents, make it through. And please, God, give this person strength to deal with what they're going through. And then I say some set prayers that people in recovery say, the 3rd step prayer, the 7th step prayer. And then I'm done. Then I can turn on the TV. And then I can see the beer commercials be like, oh, it's cool, whatever. I don't drink beer. It's like, wow, it's great. That guy hit the home run. I'm not hitting home runs. That's all right. So at least so as soon as I wake up. So again, that's something that changed for me uh, 10, 15 years ago. Again, I don't remember when exactly I started doing that, but that's my routine now. So every morning, as soon as I wake up, I pray. You know, the off chance when I'm awoken from a phone, I'm awoken by a phone call, and I've got to get up right away. But 99% of the time, I wake up and I'll say my prayers. So that is one of the things that I've done that I can still do, even during the lockdown. And then at the end of the day, that's when I get on my knees and thank God for keeping me sober that day. So those are the two things. Everything else, I don't meditate every day. Obviously, I don't go to a meeting every day. Even, I don't do a Zoom meeting every day. Even when we had live meetings, I didn't do a meeting every day. I did them more days than not. But, praying as soon as I wake up and praying before I go to bed, those are the two things that I do religiously without fail. And not picking up and being conscious of the fact that I don't drink. Again, it obviously has happened during the pandemic because restaurants are shut down. But when you do go to a restaurant, well, how is that cooked? What's in that? Because, they say, if they cook with alcohol and the alcohol is burned out of it, it's like, I just don't want it at all. What's in that? So being conscious of the fact that I don't ingest alcohol in my body. I don't do drugs. So those are, like I said, with or without the pandemic, those are things that I do religiously.
Yeah, and so you touched upon, like the fact that you're quite regimented about the prayer and you're quite on that every morning. So that gets me sort of wondering about spirituality, Sean. Would you consider yourself as a spiritual person? Do you have?
Yes. Yeah. I grew up religious. I went to the Episcopal Church, and I grew up. I was christened as a baby. I took communion. I was confirmed as an adolescent. I served on the altar. I went to church summer camp, and I, went to, midnight mass at Christmas and Easter Sunday mass, on Easter and church throughout the year. But being in recovery, I see people who are different religions, but we all are able to get along and have meetings, and we all say the prayer at the end of the meeting. So I don't know if God, I don't believe that God is only listening to the Jews or the Muslims or the Christians or the Catholics or whatever. So I've become spiritual. I believe in God. I don't know what God would look like. I don't want to ask when people, well, how could God let that happen? I don't know. It's not for me to try to figure out. I just believe. So I'm definitely a spiritual person, but not a religious one.
And so we're on a high point of recovery, Sean. I'm sure you've probably had many. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about them?
When probably one of the, and it sounds funny, one of the high points of recovery for me is getting in touch with my emotions and being moved to tears, to something beautiful, something good. I would see people, win awards and they would cry, and I was like, I didn't get it. Why would you cry at something happy? In California, for each year of sobriety, it's called a birthday, and you're given a birthday cake at your sobriety date. And the cake is presented to you by somebody who's close to you, your boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, father, whatever, family, sponsor, coworker. Well, on my first birthday, when I turned a year sober, I couldn't decide on one person giving my cake, so I had my entire family show up to do it, and we're talking 15 people. I mean, mother, father, sister, cousins, and it was a big meeting in Los Angeles. It was the biggest meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. It was popular. It was the place you wanted to be on a Saturday night if you were sober. It was like the cool meeting. And I was popular, and they started out by giving the chips for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I started getting a little nervous as they were saying the chips, and they said, okay, now we're getting the birthdays. We have however many amount of birthdays, and the first one is Sean for 1 year. So I was the first person called up that night, and I went up and I blew out the candle and hugged everybody, and I got to the microphone, and I was I said, I'm Sean, I'm a cocaine addict, and I said I want to thank my parents because they never gave up on me, and I just broke down crying. And it was the first time in my life that I ever cried from emotion, from just being overwhelmed with emotion. Again, not, you cry when somebody dies or something bad happens, but it was gratitude. And, throughout the years, I'll see something, something brought me to tears. It wasn't a boo-hoo, but it was just really touched me. Last week, I was on Facebook, and there was a picture of well, it's kind of getting to me here. We've got the Black Lives Matters, protest here. And there was a picture of an old white man, probably 70, 75 years old. The only person on this corner carrying a sign that said Black Lives Matter. Here's this old guy, being concerned with them. And yeah, it got me. It's that they're still good. As much bad and as much trouble and problems as we have going on in the world, they're still good. They're still, it's like, the quote from Anne Frank, deep down, I still believe that everybody is basically good, something along those lines. So those are the highs. Of course, when I get the girl that I really want, to like me, to go out with me, when I get the job, when my team wins, those are all great. But when something moves me to tears, for me, those are the highs of recovery that I didn't even realize that I wanted. If you'd asked me, 30 years ago, I want my team to win X amount of championships. I want a beautiful wife. I want this. I want this. I never would have believed that I wanted to be moved to tears by something.
Oh, I love that answer, Sean. I really do, because you're so right. It's the stuff that you would never expect. Maybe the things that I used to put so much value on, like the external stuff, the nice, the new, shiny stuff. And sometimes it just maybe knocks you off your feet, that it was not what you would expect. And it's those more smaller but so significant moments. And I really felt that emotion there. I could feel myself kind of getting emotional, because that is like something I still struggle with, like being in relatively early recovery myself. It's like being in touch with my emotions. And it just got me thinking back to, the only time I would ever cry before in active addiction was when I was angry or frustrated, like when I couldn't score, like when the dealer never had, or I couldn't get money, and it was just out of pure anger, frustration, or self-pity. But now I've had moments like, with my son, certainly with him being born, that being overwhelmed with emotion throughout his life, and it just kind of hits you like a ton of bricks, and you're knocked off your feet with it a bit. But
yeah.
I found that really beautiful. And the story about the old white guy with the Black Lives Matter sign, that's really moving. So I guess we could move on to what makes you happy today. And I suppose you've kind of covered that, but is there anything else that?
Yeah, I can enjoy, like I said, just being alive, being here, being able to help somebody whenever I possibly can. I don't put too much joy in external things, because there's no control. You know, I really control two things: my attitude and my actions. That's it. I got no control over anything else. Like I said, I had 2 trips to the UK planned for this. You know, I went in February. I was supposed to go in May, and I was supposed to be there tomorrow. I was supposed to leave tomorrow. And again, the trip in May and the trip tomorrow have been canceled because, you know, I can't go. So again, it's like, I can't, if I went, I'd have a good time, but I can't go. So whenever it happens, I'll go. You know, I enjoy talking to my friends. You know, I enjoy having just good conversations with people. Yesterday was Father's Day. My father's been passed, you know, for 19 years. So I just, you know, reach out to the guys who I know that are dads and that are happy, you know. So I think I text 20 of my friends yesterday, not a group text, individually, each one of them, you know, happy Father's Day, happy Father's Day, happy Father's Day. And there's guys who I admire that they're good dads. You know, I don't have any kids, probably won't, might not, might, whatever. You know, it's not something I can control. You know, I don't think it's going to happen, but it might. You know, maybe I'll be lucky enough to be a stepdad. You know, I don't know. So just sending out text messages to my friends yesterday who were fathers and having them respond to me, that made me happy. You know, that made me, you know, when I remember somebody's sobriety birthday and I can reach out to them and they're like, you always remember. And I was like, well, no, I kind of write it down. You know, I put it in my calendar and I'm reminded, you know, or I'll write it down. It's easy. If I can spend 15 minutes at the beginning of the year transferring, you know, from this year to next year, somebody's sobriety birthday or their natal birthday, and take, you know, the 30 seconds to send them a text or a Facebook post and give a little joy to somebody, that makes me happy.
Oh, that's so nice. And you were talking about people you admire there, Sean, as well. So inspiration, like, who are you inspired by? What people do you admire? I suppose you just talked about the fathers there, but if there are people in particular that...
Like I said, nobody that I can think of right offhand, just, you know, people who do the right thing, you know, who, you know, the old white man carrying the Black Lives Matter sign, you know.
I love that one. I do love that.
You know, my friends who are suiting up and showing up for their kids, they're being fathers. You know, people who fight through, you know, challenges in life just to make it. You know, I realize that, you know, being sober 29 years, it's an accomplishment. It's something that I've put some work in, but there's a lot of people who have had a much harder time than I have. You know, knock on wood, my sobriety's been pretty easy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, has there been any time that you thought about jacking it in, like quitting?
Yeah, when I was almost 10 years sober, I had stopped going to meetings and everything was about the outside. I had a beautiful young girlfriend, I had a nice car, I had a great apartment, and, you know, had a good job, and everything was taken in a short period of time, and I didn't really know how to, like, start looking at the positives, the small positives. It was just, oh, woe is me, you know, and I really thought about getting loaded again, just to forget everything for a short period of time. But I realized that it wasn't going to be a short period of time. I had enough experience to show to remind me that it was going to end badly. You know, that it wasn't going to be just get high tonight. It was going to end badly. And I was able to get through that and work the steps again, and, you know, found the courage, the strength just to continue, and realize that getting through, you know, I'm going to get through things. And when I get through things, that gives me experience that I can get through this. and it also gives me something to tell somebody else. You know, that's what 12-step programs are. It's one addict, one alcoholic helping another, telling stories. You know, we tell a story about some time that was hard for us or difficult for us when, you know, and we got through it. And that helps us to help somebody else. You know, when you hear that I did it, and I hear that so-and-so did it, and so-and-so heard that so-and-so did it, we can get through this.
Yeah. It's just like getting clean and sober, isn't it? When you hear that one person's done it, you know that it's possible. When you hear another person's done it, then it's definitely possible, and maybe that I can achieve that. So it's probably just along the same lines. And what about, so 29 years have passed. So is there any kind of advice or wise words that you would look back and give to Sean in his first year of recovery?
Like I said, the first, as far as recovery, no, that, you know, there are financial things. Like I said, maybe I would have gotten better at money, you know, earlier, you know, but as far as recovery, I think like I said, those first 5, 6, 7, 8 years were all pretty good. There's nothing I would do differently. You know, there are things in business that I would have done differently, but as far as recovery. And then I also think back, though, that if I had actually given sobriety a chance in 1987, you know, like there are people that I've known since that first meeting. So, you know, my friend Christopher, my friend Kara, they're 33 years sober. You know, because they came in 1987 and they stayed. You know, what would my life be like if I had tried to get sober the first time? You know, what would my life be like if I got sober in the fall of 1989 when I was going to meetings pretending to be sober? You know, what would my life be like if I'd gotten sober and stayed sober in 1990 instead of having one more? But I can't focus on that because I wouldn't be the man that I am today. You know, every decision that I made 30 years ago, 33 years ago has made me the man that I am today. You know, so I can't get caught up in that. But again, as far as recovery, I'm pretty confident with everything that I did, you know, in 1991, 92, 93, 94, 95. Again, as getting older, I've got more wisdom. Again, there's definitely, you know, relationships that I might not have gotten into, you know, when I saw the red flag and, you know, no, she'll be fine, you know, or, you know, let me do this instead of this. And, you know, it's like Bill Wilson, you know, this, you know, ominous warning that I failed to heed. You know, maybe if I had heeded that warning, you know, there was always a sign for something, for some bad decision that I made that, gosh, I wish I could have done that one again. You know, I wish I didn't have to learn that lesson, but, you know, I'm fine.
And it's all about the learning, eh? It's always the learning in it. And Sean, we're almost at the end. I was going to ask, could you give me 3 words that have described your recovery?
Ooh, 3 words. It's been good.
Oh, I like that. That was clever. It's been good. Well, no, that's us come to the end, Sean. And again, I want to thank you from all of us for coming along and agreeing to do this. And I know you've taken time out your day for us to come and speak for REDTalks. I hope everybody's enjoyed it at home. And I hope you enjoy the rest of lockdown, Sean. I know that it's a bit different over there to what is now. You're kind of coming out of phase 2. Things are starting to open back up. Obviously, we're still pretty much shut down in Scotland. Things are a little bit different. We're a bit behind England. England's kind of opening back up and stuff. But we will maybe hope to see you sometime soon when flights start happening and the world kind of resumes to some sort of normality. We'd like to see you and come along to the Bathgate Hub in West Lothian and come along.
I'd love to.
That'd be great. Well, that is the end of our Red Talks with Sean Dugan, guys. Tune in next time to see another Red Talks. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.